Hello, dear squirrels. I'm going to attempt to read. It's a long chapter, 28 pages, so I may read, see if I can get through 14. Half. But it's chapter 17, Annette. The troubles of the future, however, soon faded before the troubles of the present. And of these, the most immediate and pressing was that of hunger. Tommy had a healthy and vigorous appetite. The steak and chips partaken of for lunch seemed now to belong to another decade. He regretfully recognized the fact that he would not make a success of a hunger strike. He prowled aimlessly about his prison. Once or twice he discarded dignity and pounded on the door, but nobody answered the summons. "Hang it all," said Tommy indignantly. "They can't mean to starve me to death." A newborn fear passed through his mind that this might perhaps be one of those pretty ways of making a prisoner speak, which had been attributed to Boris, but on reflection he dismissed the idea. "It's that sour-faced brute Conrad," he decided. "That's a fellow I shall enjoy getting even with one of these days. This is just a bit of spite on his part, I'm certain of it." Further meditations induced in him the feeling that it would be extremely pleasant to bring something down with a whack on Conrad's egg-shaped head. Tommy stroked his own head tenderly and gave himself up to the pleasures of imagination. Finally, a bright idea flashed across his brain. 10 bells and all is well. His brain. Why not convert imagination into reality? Conrad was undoubtedly the tenant of the house. The others, with the possible exception of the bearded German, merely used it as a rendezvous. Therefore, why not wait in ambush for Conrad behind the door, and when he entered, bring down a chair or one of the decrepit pictures smartly on his head? One would, of course, be careful not to hit too hard, and then simply walk out. If he met anyone on the way down, well, Tommy brightened at the thought of an encounter with his fists. Such an affair was infinitely more in his line than the verbal encounter of this afternoon. Intoxicated by his plan, Tommy gently unhooked the picture of the devil and Faust and settled himself in position. His hopes were high. The plan seemed to him simple but excellent. Time went on, but Conrad did not appear. Night and day were the same in this prison room. Tommy's wristwatch, which enjoyed a certain degree of accuracy, informed him that it was 9 o'clock in the evening. Tommy reflected gloomily that if supper did not arrive soon, it would be a question of waiting for breakfast. At 10 o'clock, hope deserted him, and he flung himself on the bed to seek consolation and sleep. In 5 minutes, his woes were forgotten. The sound of the key turning in the lock awoke him from his slumbers, not belonging to the type of hero who is famous for awakening in full possession of his faculties. Tommy merely blinked at the ceiling and wondered vaguely where he was. Then he remembered and looked at his watch. It was 8 o'clock. "It's either early morning tea or breakfast," deduced the young man, "and pray God it's the latter." The door swung open too late. Tommy remembered his scheme of obliterating the prepossessing Conrad. A moment later he was glad that he had, for it was not Conrad who entered, but a girl. She carried a tray which she set down on the table. In the feeble light of the gas burner, Tommy blinked at her. He decided at once that she was one of the most beautiful girls he had ever seen. Her hair was full rich brown with sudden glints of gold in it, as though there were imprisoned sunbeams struggling in its depths. There was a wild rose quality about her face. Her hair, no. Her eyes set wide apart were hazel, a golden hazel that again recalled a memory of sunbeams. A delirious thought shot through Tommy's mind. "Are you Jane Finn?" he asked breathlessly. The girl shook her head wonderingly. "My name is Annette, monsieur." She spoke in a soft, broken English. "Oh," said Tommy, rather taken aback. And he says something in French. "Oui, monsieur, monsieur parle français." You tell I never took any foreign languages. "Not for any length of time," said Tommy. "What's that, breakfast?" The girl nodded. Tommy dropped off the bed and came and inspected the contents of the tray. It consisted of a loaf, some margarine, and a jug of coffee. "The living is not equal to the Ritz," he observed with a sigh, "but for what we are at last about to receive, the Lord has made me truly thankful. Amen." He drew up a chair, and the girl turned away to the door. "Wait a sec," cried Tommy. "There are lots of things I want to ask you, Annette. What are you doing in this house? Don't tell me you're Conrad's niece or daughter or anything, because I can't believe it." "I do the service, monsieur." I'm probably saying that word. "I'm not related to anybody." "I see," said Tommy. "You know what I asked you just now. Have you ever heard that name?" "I have heard people speak of Jane Finn, I think." "You don't know where she is?" Annette shook her head. She's not in this house." "She's not in this house, for instance?" "Oh, no. I must go now. They'll be waiting for me." She hurried out. The key turned in the lock. "I wonder who they are," mused Tommy, as he continued to make inroads on the loaf. "With a bit of luck, that girl might help me to get out of here. She doesn't look like one of the gang." At 1 o'clock, Annette reappeared with another tray, but this time Conrad accompanied her. "Good morning," said Tommy. "Amiably, you have not used pear soap, I see." Conrad growled threateningly. "No light repartee, have you, old bean? There, we can't always have brains as well as beauty. What have we for lunch? Stew?" "How did I know? Elementary, my dear Watson. The smell of onions is unmistakable." "Talk away," grunted the man. "It's little enough time you'll have to talk in, maybe." The remark was unpleasant in its suggestion that Tommy ignored it. He sat down at the table. "Retire, varlet," he said with a wave of his hand. Prate not to thy betters." That evening Tommy sat on the bed and conjugated deeply. Would Conrad again accompany the girl? If he did not, should he risk trying to make an ally of her? He decided that he must leave no stone unturned. His position was desperate. At 8 o'clock, the familiar sound of the key turning made him spring to his feet. The girl was alone. "Shut the front door," he commanded. "I want to speak to you." She shut the door. I say shut the front door. Shut the door. "I want to speak to you," she obeyed. "Look here, Annette, I want you to help me get out of this." She shook her head. "Impossible. There are 3 of them on the floor below." "Oh." Tommy was secretly grateful for the information. "But you would help me if you could." "No." "Why not?" The girl hesitated. "I think they are my own people. You have spied upon them. They are quite right to keep you here." They are a bad lot, Annette. If you'll help me, I'll take you away from the lot of them, and you'd probably get a good whack of money." But the girl merely shook her head. "I dare not. I'm afraid of them." She turned away. "Wouldn't you do anything to help another girl?" cried Tommy. "She's about your age, too. Won't you save her from their clutches?" "You mean Jane Finn?" "Yes." "It is her you came here to look for?" "Yes." "That's it." The girl looked at him, then passed her hand across her forehead. "Jane Finn. Always I hear that name. It is familiar." Tommy came forward eagerly. "You must know something about her." But the girl turned away abruptly. "I know nothing, only the name." She walked towards the door. Suddenly she uttered a cry. Tommy stared. She had caught sight of the picture he had laid against the wall the night before. For a moment he caught a look of terror in her eyes. As inexplicably it changed to relief. "Ah! Stop!" Then abruptly she went out of the room. Tommy could make nothing of it. Did she fancy that he meant to attack her with it? Surely not. He rehung the picture on the wall thoughtfully. 3 more days went by in dreary inaction. Tommy felt the strain telling on his nerves. He saw no one but Conrad and Annette, and the girl had become dumb. She spoke only in monosyllables. A kind of dark suspicion smoldered in her eyes. Tommy felt that if this solitary confinement went on much longer, he would go mad. He gathered from Conrad that they were waiting for orders from Mr. Brown. Perhaps, thought Tommy, he was abroad or away, and they were obliged to wait for his return. But the evening of the 3rd day brought a rude awakening. It was barely 7 o'clock when he heard the tramp of footsteps outside in the passage. In another minute the door was flung open. Conrad entered. With him was the evil-looking number 14. Tommy's heart sank at the sight of them. "Evening, Governor," said the man with a leer. "Got those ropes, mate?" The silent Conrad produced a length of fine cord. The next minute number 14's hands, horribly dexterous, were winding the cord round his limbs while Conrad held him down. "What the devil?" began Tommy, but the slow, speechless grin of the silent Conrad froze the words on his lips. Number 14 proceeded deftly with this task. In another minute Tommy was a mere helpless bundle. Then at last Conrad spoke. "Thought you'd bluffed us, did you, with what you knew and what you didn't know? Bargained with us, and all the time it was a bluff. Bluff, you know less than a kitten. But your number's up now, all right. You ugly word, swine." Tommy lay silent. There was nothing to say. He had failed. Somehow or other, the omnipotent Mr. Brown had seen through his pretensions. Suddenly a thought occurred to him. "A very good speech, Conrad," he said approvingly, "but wherefore the bonds and fetters? Why not let this kind gentleman here cut my throat without delay?" "Garn," said number 14 unexpectedly. Think we're as green as to do you in here and have the police nosing round? Not half. We've ordered the carriage for your lordship tomorrow morning, but in the meantime we're not taking any chances, see?" "Nothing," said Tommy, "could be plainer than your words, unless it was your face." "Stow it," said number 14. "With pleasure," replied Tommy. "You're making a sad mistake, but yours will be the loss." "You don't kid us that way again," said number 14. "Talking as though you were still at the blooming Ritz, aren't you?" Tommy made no reply. He was engaging in wonder how Mr. Brown had discovered his identity. He decided that tuppence in something. Wait a minute. He decided that he was engaged in wondering how Mr. Brown had discovered it. He decided that tuppence, in the throes of anxiety, had gone to the police, and that his disappearance having been made public, the gang had not been slow to put two and two together. The two men departed and the door slammed. Tommy was left to his meditations. They were not pleasant ones. Already his limbs felt cramped and stiff. He was utterly helpless and he could see no hope anywhere. About an hour had passed when he heard the key softly turn and the door opened. It was Annette. Tommy's heart beat a little faster. He'd forgotten the girl. Was it possible that she had come to his help? Sadly, he heard Conrad's voice. Come out of it, Annette. He doesn't want any supper tonight. Oui, oui, something in French. But I must take the other tray. We need the things on it. Well, hurry up, growled Conrad. Without looking at Tommy, the girl went over to the table and picked up the tray. She raised a hand and turned out the light. Curse you, Conrad had come to the door. Why did you do that? I always turn it out. You should have told me. Shall I relight it? Conrad? No, come on out of it. Le beau petit monsieur, cried Annette, pausing by the bed in the darkness. You have tied him up well. He is like a trussed chicken. The frank amusement in her tone jarred on the boy, but at that moment, to his amazement, he felt her hand running lightly over his bonds, and something small and cold was pressing into the palm of his hand. Come on, Annette. All this French. Mais me, voila. The door shut. Tommy heard Conrad say, Lock it and give me the key. The footsteps died away. Tommy lay petrified with amusement. The object Annette had thrust into his hand was a small penknife, the blade open. From that day, from the way she had studiously avoided looking at him and her action with the light, he came to the conclusion that the room was overlooked. There must be a peephole somewhere in the walls. Remembering how guarded she had always been in her manner, he saw that she had probably been under observation all the time. Had he said anything to give himself away? Hardly. He had revealed a wish to escape and desire to find Jane Finn, but nothing that could have given a clue to his own attack. No, wait a minute. Getting sleepy. I lost my place. Had he said anything to give himself away? Hardly. He had revealed a wish to escape and a desire to find Jane Finn, but nothing that could have given a clue to his own identity. True, his question to Annette had proved that he was personally unacquainted with Jane Finn, but he had never pretended otherwise. The question now was, did Annette really know more? Were her denials intended primarily for the listeners? On that point, he could do something. On that point, he could come to no conclusion. But there was a more vital question that drove out all the others. Could he, bound as he was, manage to cut his bonds? He essayed essayed cautiously to rub the open blade up and down on the cord that bound his two wrists together. It was an awkward business, but it was an awkward business, and drew a smothered howl of pain from him as the knife cut into his wrist. But slowly and doggedly he went on sawing to and fro. He cut the flesh badly, but at last he felt the cord slacken. With his hands free, the rest was easy. 50 minutes later, he stood upright with some difficulty owing to the cramp in his limbs. His first care was to bind up his bleeding wrists. Then he sat on the edge of the bed to think. Conrad had taken the key of the door, so he could expect little more assistance from Annette. The only outlet from the room was the door. Consequently, he would perforce have to wait until the two men returned to fetch him. But when they did, Tommy smiled. Moving with an infinite caution in the dark room, he found and unhooked the famous picture. He felt an economical pleasure that his first plan would not be wasted. There was now nothing to do but wait. He waited. The night passed slowly. Tommy lived through an eternity of hours. But at last he heard footsteps. He stood upright, drew a deep breath, and clutched the picture firmly. The door opened, a faint light streamed in from outside. Conrad went straight towards the gas to light it. Tommy deeply regretted that it was he who entered first. It would have been pleasant to get even with Conrad. Number 14 followed. As he stepped across the threshold, Tommy brought the picture down with a terrific force on his head. Number 14 went down amidst a stupendous crash of broken glass. In a minute, Tommy had slipped out and pulled to the door. The key was in the lock. He turned it and withdrew it just as Conrad hurled himself against the door from the inside with a volley of curses. For a moment, Tommy hesitated. There was the sound of someone stirring on the floor below. Then the German's voice came up the stairs. "Got him, Himmel? Conrad, what is it?" And I'm going to have to stop there, y'all. Exciting. Good night. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. I'm going to turn in. I've stayed up all day since 8ish. Do need to eat something else. Throat is a little bit sore, but I'm doing great considering. Y'all have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Love you. Bye-bye.